land of Palestine had been a part of the Ottoman Empire. The population consisted of 86% Muslim, 10% Christian, and only 4% Jewish. For the most part, all of the ethnic groups coexisted peacefully. After the Jewish people had been oppressed during the Holocaust, many wanted to find a homeland. They started immigrating to Palestine. But as more and more Jews started to occupy the area, the Palestinian natives started to feel opposed. The Zionists are a group of extremist Jews. They wished to take over Palestine as a completely Jewish state. This created extreme conflict.
The UN signed off on the partition plan in 1948, which recommended the Palestinians give away 55% of the land. Zionists were only 30% of the population and owned 7% of the land. The UN passed Resolution 181, dividing the Palestinian territory into Jewish and Arab states in November 1947.
From 1947 to 1949, there was a war known as Al-Nakba, the Arabic word for catastrophe. This war was only fought on Palestinian land. Deir Yassin was the Israeli leader, and he committed 16 massacres on the Palestinian people before Arabs intervened. There were a total of 33 massacres. 75% of the Palestinian land was conquered, while 750,000 Palestinians were made refugees and had to move out of the country. A group of Zionists tried to erase all Palestinian culture from society. In 1967, there was another war called the 6 Days War. The Israeli forces occupied another 22% of the land. The United States was brought into the war because the Zionists attacked a U.S. Navy ship, the USS Liberty. 200 American servicemen and women were either injured or killed in this attack. The president at the time, Lyndon Johnson, did not send rescue flights because the United States were allied with Israel.
The Intifada, literally meaning to shake off, signifies a Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation. The Intifada began on December 9, 1987, in a refugee camp in Gaza, when an Israeli truck crashed into 4 Palestinians. This sparked rebellion all over the occupied land. Although under a two-state solution, Palestinians were forced to pay taxes to Israel, while enduring army raids, unjustified confiscation, and the lack of basic civil rights. The Intifada began as merely avoiding paying taxes, protesting peacefully, and boycotting Israeli products. Israeli forces responded brutally. In 1990, Yitzhak Rabin ordered the Israeli forces to break the bones of the Palestinians who resisted. The UN condemned the actions of the Israelis due to the unusually high number of Palestinian deaths during the Intifada. The Second Intifada broke out on September 28, 2000, when Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and his soldiers visited Al-Aqsa, the third holiest location for Muslims. As a technique to anger the Palestinians, the Prime Minister and his soldiers began to repeat a phrase that was broadcasted during the 1967 Six-Day War, when Israeli occupation forces seized East Jerusalem. The Temple Mount is in our hands. According to the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, at least 4,973 Palestinian civilians were killed over the course of the Second Intifada. Among them were 1,262 children, 274 women, and 32 medical personnel attempting to administer aid to injured civilians. More than 10,000 children were wounded during the 5 years of violence, as reported by the Swiss-based Defense for Children International, a non-profit organization dedicated to protecting children's rights. Called the Israeli West Bank Barrier, Israel constructed an illegal apartheid wall on land that legally belongs to the Palestinians. Palestinians also have to endure Israeli checkpoints and a strict curfew. In 2004, the apartheid wall was ruled illegal by the International Court of Justice. However, the Israelis have not stopped building it.
The IDF, otherwise known as the Israel Defense Forces, was created in May of 1948 by Defense Minister David Ben-Gurion as a conscript army. The army was formed mainly of the Haganah, Irgun, and the Lehi group. The IDF serves as Israel's armed force for its major military operations, reinforcing peace arrangements, and ensuring the overall security in the West Bank. The mass amount of wars and border conflicts the IDF has been involved in makes it one of the most battle-trained armed forces in the world. Originally, the IDF fought on 3 fronts, against Lebanon and Syria in the north, Jordan and Iraq in the east, and Egypt in the south. After the Egyptian-Israeli Peace Treaty of 1979, ending their conflict and making Egypt the first Arab country to recognize Israel, Israel began concentrating its forces in southern Lebanon and Palestinian territories. This also includes the Palestinian uprisings of the First and Second Intifada. Although the IDF has always been outnumbered by its enemies, it maintains a qualitative advantage by deploying advanced weapon systems. The IDF differs from any other armed forces around the world in many ways. These differences include the mandatory drafting of women soldiers and its close relations with the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The IDF also has close relations with the United States, where they have collaborated and shared military research and weapon development. The IDF has also been the recipient of the largest foreign annual assistance since 1976.
Hamas was founded in 1987, starting from the fundamentalist of Muslim Brotherhood. They stressed the jihad as a means to solve the problem. They wanted to create an Islamic state in all of Palestine. The group in early 2006 won legislative election of the Palestinian territories, ending the secular Fatah party that was Palestine's authority. In July 2014, the uneasy calm between Hamas and Israel broke down completely after 3 Israeli teenagers were kidnapped and killed in the West Bank in June, causing the Palestinians to be killed by Israel settlers in revenge. Now, refugees are not allowed to return to the land. Many Palestinians are held in prisons without trial. There is also a blockade, so food and medicine are blocked from entering Gaza.